I wanted to talk about something that's dear to my heart. So I started a program in Miami called Kings. And we started it with one purpose and one purpose only. And that purpose was to teach young men how to become men. If it's one thing that I know throughout my years is that you can have 40-year-old boys walking around. You can have 35-year-old boys, 20-year-old boys walking around. And I think that what needs to be done and what needs to be taught, especially, is that as kings, there's a certain thing about a king. Does anyone here, just really quick, can you name me just one king? Just one king.
Arthur.
All right, King Arthur. Actually, that's perfect, King Arthur. What'd you say? Anyone? No? Okay. Really quick. So I'm gonna focus on two, especially right now. And the first one is King David. All right. So King David, for those of you who don't know, he was actually the anointed king at the age of 14. But he went on the run for about 15 years. He wouldn't take his throne for 15 years. How would you feel if you had something that was promised to you at 15 years old or 14 years old, and all of a sudden you don't get it till you're 30? That's exactly it right there. So here's the thing, right? He still had to wait, but here's what God did. He used that time to prepare him. A lot of you guys right now, how many of you guys are in 10th grade? Sophomores, anybody? Do we have any freshmen? So sophomores and up. So you guys have time right now. But really what you do in this moment now, what you do is more important than anything else. What you learn now is going to start to shape you for your future. It's going to shape you into the man or the woman that you're going to become. And it's real easy to begin to just kind of toss it aside. I got time, I got time, I got time, I got time. If your coaches or anyone around here will tell you anything, you don't have as much time as you think you do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I work with a lot of inner city kids. That's my heart, that's my passion. I work with a lot of them. And I'm going to tell you one of the hardest moments in my life. One of the hardest moments in my life was when I found out that a kid that was 18 years old going to graduate that year was shot at a park. That was one of the hardest moments in my life. That was one of the hardest moments in my life because he was trying to get his act together, but he decided that something else was more important. And he forgot that he was a king within that moment. You see, it becomes real easy to forget that you're a king. It becomes real easy to start acting like a joker. It becomes real easy for you to start just forgetting who you are. I want to tell you something. I tell my players this all the time on my basketball team. What's on the front of your jersey, that belongs to me. What's on the back of your jersey, which is your last name, that belongs to your family. You see, my mom had one thing when I hung out with friends that she would always tell me: don't embarrass me. She didn't mean don't embarrass me like I'm going to go and start acting like this or something else and she's going to be there with me. What she meant is that the last name represents my family. And what happens is that over time we forget that our family is so much more than just our last name. That you represent generations. You represent people who came before you. You represent people who are still looking down on you, and either you're embarrassing them or you're doing great things. It's one or the other. How you carry your name is so much more important than what you think it is. And I think what has happened is that generations have forgotten. They've forgotten. It becomes real easy. It becomes real easy to forget that. But at some point, you got to stand. King Arthur was considered one of the greatest kings of England. He had one goal, and that was to unite all of England. That was his goal. When he became king, I just want to unite all of the kingdom. I want to bring them all together under one banner. And he was one of the closest ones to do it. What's your goal in life? What is it that you want? You guys want to stop playing football in high school? You want to stop cheerleading in high school? You want to peak in high school? Or do you want to continue? It starts by you first defining who you are. It starts by you first realizing that you're more than just football players. It starts by you realizing that you should be changing your school. That's what you should be doing. It's really easy to fall into what everyone else is doing. That's the easy thing, to go with the tide. It's a little bit harder when you got to step back. It's a little bit harder when you got to go against what everyone else is doing. You're going to have people who are going to tell you this is right, this is law, this is this. Listen, there are a lot of things that were law that weren't right. You look throughout history, there are a lot of things that were law that were not right, and they had to correct it. Slavery was a law. It didn't make it right, did it? Jim Crowism was a law. It didn't make it right, did it? And along the way, we forget that sometimes. That just because it's a law, it doesn't make it right. What happens is you have people like Martin Luther King who stand up and go, this is what I'm going to do. You have people who begin to go against and fight against it. Are you standing for something more in your school? Are you the one setting the pace? You see, that's what a king does. That's what a king does. A king sets the pace. A king is the one who begins to set up everything. Everyone else just follows. Gentlemen, ladies, it's real easy. It's real easy to fall into it. Ladies, you're queens. You gotta act like it. You're kings, you gotta act like it. How you stand, how you walk, everything. It says everything about you. I can learn more about you just how you walk and how you talk with your friends. That's it. I don't even have to meet you. I've been doing it for over 22 years. I've been working with kids for over 22 years. So trust me when I tell you, I can tell more about you by the way you walk and the way you talk than anything else. I don't have to meet you. I don't have to have a conversation with you. I already figured you out. You see, that's what a king does. He figures you out. He figures out the enemy. He figures out those things, and then he wins. When you step onto the football field today, you're either going to step on knowing you won, or you're going to step on in defeat. I told you David was one of the greatest kings. And when David stood against someone who was 9 feet tall, over 9 feet tall, and I'm not talking about 9 feet skinny. I'm not talking about Yao Ming or anything like that. I'm talking about 9 feet built as anything. His armor weighed like over 200 pounds. So I'm not talking about some small dude. I'm not talking about some skinny dude. I'm talking about somebody who was huge. And when David stepped up to him and he took out that slingshot, he thought it was a joke. The giant laughed. But David said, you come against me with sword and spear, and I come against you in the name of the Lord. And he said, today, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the birds of the air and the beasts of the field will feast on your carcass. Man, that's not something small. What he said is not something small. That's not something tiny. That's not some little comment like, oh, today I'm going to beat you. Today you lost. No, he stood up and he's like, what? And he was 14 years old. He was 14 years old when he did this. He hit him right in the head with a rock. Down he went. Later he walked over, picked up his sword, cut off Goliath's head. You see, when you're going to win a victory, you got to cut off the enemy's head. Plain and simple. Now, I know you can't, you go to jail if you do that today. Trust me, I know that. Let's not do that. All right, you can't do that on the football field. Sorry, guys. But I'm going to tell you this. Listen, I'm going to tell you this real quick on my end. You can still step on the field and already have the victory in mind. You can step into school and already have the victory in mind. I don't know how many of you are not Christians, and I don't know how many of you are Christians, but I'm going to tell you what has worked for me, and just really quick so you know a little bit about me. At 21, I flipped my truck, and this is going to be real quick. At 21, coming back from Camp Suwannee, I flipped my truck ejecting all 4 of my passengers, killing 1. My best friend. Listen, I know what pain is. I know what loss is. I've suffered loss. But at the end of it all, I could have used that excuse to say I'm done. I could have used the excuse of losing my best friend to say I'm done. I'm done with life. I'm done with everything. I'm not working with kids. I'm just going to go into a corner and cry myself to sleep every night. That becomes real easy. But at some moment, the king inside of me rose up and said, you're not done yet. Because you know what? In the end, I had to speak like David. I had to speak like David. I had to learn to talk like David and realize that the victory was already in hand. The victory was already in front of me. I don't know your past. You only know a little bit about my past. But are you going to let your past dictate you, or is the king going to rise up at some moment? I don't know what teachers have told you. I don't know what coaches have told you. All I know is at some moment, a king's got to rise up. And it's all either going to rise up in you or it's not. But I know this. At 40 years old, I know this. At the end of the day, the only person I have to blame for anything else in my life is myself. And one day you'll realize that. Gentlemen, I'm going to close with a word of prayer real quick, and then we're done. Thank you. Abba, I thank you for this opportunity for me to come here and for me to talk. Lord, I pray that something is sunk into, just even if it's just a few of them, that maybe they'll rise up and be kings within their schools and begin to change their school. That maybe something inside of them will rise up and start to make a difference in the halls, treat each other and treat others differently. Just maybe a king will rise up and a queen will rise up. I pray that you would be with them as they play, that you would give them the heart and the passion, that you would keep them safe most of all. In your mighty name I pray. Amen. Amen.